Well, President Trump may be running for re-election, but if Democrats in 17 states have their way, nobody may have a chance to vote for him. I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle Now. And Bill, yes, there are moves underway in 17 state legislatures to exclude Donald Trump from the 2020 presidential ballot because he has refused to release his tax returns.
Excellent.
Now, from the top, let's just say two things. Number one, there's no legal requirement for a presidential candidate to release his tax returns. And number two, there are significant constitutional questions of whether states passing legislation that affect federal office balloting is even constitutional. Probably is not, if you're to believe Andrew McCarthy. But nevertheless, Bill, President Trump did say quite a long time ago that he planned to release his taxes as soon as the IRS was done auditing him. That's a long, long time ago. I get the sense that there's no condition under which he will release those tax returns. Doesn't that just keep picking at a scab that doesn't need to be there? After all, he says his finances are terrific.
First of all, it is my genuine dear hope that news like this continues to arrive on a daily basis between now and Election Day. And I hope with a burning passion that all of those resolutions pass in all 22 states. That would be, to me, just nirvana, knowing that going into the election, 2 weeks before the election, the Democrats had made sure that the president of the United States who's running for re-election, his name is not on the ballot. That would just be perfect for me. I can't imagine a better outcome than this. So I hope the story gets a lot of traction, and I'm happy to push it along.
Well, go ahead. I was just going to say there are 5 Senate, 4 or 5 state senates that have already approved this measure, including your own home state of California. I was just going to say, please, God, please, not California, anything but that. I couldn't take it. You never would have guessed that, would you?
Oh, no. I'm sorry. I got the vapors. I have to clutch my pearls until I recover. Good. The insanity continues, and as the first term of Donald Trump's 2-term presidency unfolds, what we find that the left is getting more and more insane. They were insane waiting for the Mueller report, but when the Mueller report fizzled, now we're going to get to see this kind of thing, and so it is exceedingly good news for anybody in the country who's not a rabid progressive, and that's most of the people in the country. Now, as far as releasing the tax returns go, you can end this discussion right away. Is he required to release his tax returns? I imagine he's not, because because when the Constitution was written, there was no income taxes back when we still had a small government. So I'm going to say that there's no legal requirement, that the president releases tax returns. Correct?
That is true. And
okay.
It's also probably unconstitutional for the state to pass legislation keeping him off the ballot.
Which is why I'm so overjoyed by this. Overjoyed because, first of all, it is, and I'll deal with why he's not releasing them in a second. But again, I'm overjoyed with this because what this is the foot stomping of a 4-year-old who's being dragged out of the Walmart without the toy. And they figure the more noise they make and the more crying and screaming hysterics they do, first of all, they collapse, their feet don't work anymore. You got to drag them out of the Walmart. What they really need is a good spanking, and I suspect they'll get one of those in November of 2020. But until then, this is what children do. They know it's not constitutional, and if Donald Trump is not legally required to release his tax returns, and he's not, then not only is this movement going to not bear any fruit, but it is going to fail. It's going to embarrass them. It's going to explode in their face as usual. And once again, it's going to show the American people that there is no democratic agenda other than stop President Trump. And that means stop him because we want him to do something that he doesn't legally have to do. And since we want him to do something and he didn't do it, therefore, the people of the state of California will not have a chance to vote for him in the election. Please, God, please. Please ride this all the way to November of 2020. Now, as far as why he doesn't release his tax returns and said that he would, Back when he said he would release his tax returns was back when James Comey said to him, no, you're not under investigation at all by any kind of collusion with the Russians. No. You're not under any kind of investigation at all. This is back when Donald Trump and the rest of the American people knew that the left was going to be sore, but they didn't know that they would be quite so openly treasonous. I wouldn't release my tax returns. I wouldn't release it to him on principle. I really wouldn't.
So you're saying this practice that has existed in presidential politics since the 1970s really was a bad idea to begin with?
All the way back to the 1970s we go. So for 200 years, you didn't have to release your tax returns, and now for the last 50 or 40, you do.
We don't have to, Bill.
Right.
That's the point of this thing.
No. Now we're talking turkey, Scotty. You don't have to. People did before as a means of courtesy and as a means of reassuring the public. And these were the days when the FBI was an independent organization that investigated criminal activity, not an organization that conspired to elect the President of the United States against the wishes of the American people. So that's why you would release your tax returns in the 70s up until this last campaign, because up until Barack Obama got a hold of it, we still had something that looked like a government. And something that had the general approximation of a news media, but those days are gone now, and just like the supermajority vote, just like the nuclear option, the Harry Reid option, it's gone, and it's gone because of the viciousness and the out of bounds venality of the progressives once again. Harry Reid wanted a vote, and he didn't have the votes, so he invoked the nuclear option. He destroyed a tradition that went back a lot further than making your tax returns available. And so, if that's how you want to play, that's how you play. Okay,
so would you be in favor of saying no future candidate running for president should release their tax returns? We don't want to see that.
It's not that I don't want to see it; it's none of my business.
Well, how is it none of your business when you're about to turn over the keys to the finances of the entire nation? Don't you think it's incumbent upon the American people to understand whether this person has been a fiscally responsible agent or, frankly, has been corrupt in his management of money, has even obeyed the laws, the taxation laws that everybody else has to obey?
The way we can find out whether or not they've obeyed the law is to see whether or not criminal charges have been brought against that person. And if there have no criminal charges brought against that person, how much money he makes and what he spends it on is none of my damn business. None. Zero. It is absolutely none of my business.
Now, Bill Whittle, you're the same guy who spent months saying Barack Obama should have turned over his birth certificate, but you don't want to see Donald Trump's
But that's a totally different
documents?
thing. That is a completely different thing. 100% totally different thing. If Donald Trump was required by constitutional law to turn over his tax returns, then this would be a no-brainer, and I'd be completely on that side. But when we were talking about Barack Obama's birth certificate, we were talking about providing evidence that he was, in fact, legally eligible to hold the office. And that's an entirely different thing. So,
but to take your argument,
to try to conflate the two is just plain nonsense. To say that one thing which is a courtesy and the other thing which is a requirement are somehow the same is just plain nuts. And for me to assume, and for me to consider hypocritical because I want the legal requirement, but I think that the prerogative is a little dicey anyway, is just plain flat out wrong.
Well, to pick up the thread of your argument, you said there was no income tax in the early days of the founding of this country, so there couldn't even have been a requirement of that. Well, there wasn't the kind of documentation of birth that we have today either. And I'm sure a lot of people were born out in the frontiers that had no really reasonably legal looking document that would prove their birth, but those people could have been elected president. So why was it such a big dang deal? Let's not get into the birther thing. But what I'm saying is,
I assure you that if somebody had been born on the frontier in a territory that had, and this I'm sure this probably happened in American history,
like Illinois,
in a territory that was not part of the United States at the time of their birth, when that territory came into the Union, so did they. So I don't buy that argument either.
I'm just saying they didn't have the ability to document it as well as we can now. But
we don't have the ability to document anything as well as we can today. That's the problem.
I guess the point of this is why Donald Trump has publicly said that his finances are excellent, that his taxes are all perfectly legal.
Right.
Why not take an argument away from these people instead of letting this fester? You actually think it's going to play to the benefit of the Trump campaign to keep this thing alive?
I'll tell you what I think. Yes, I'll tell you what I think. I think that his finances are Perfectly sound. I think you're going to see financial. I think it's going to be exactly like the Mueller report, which is exactly why I don't think Donald Trump should release his tax returns, Scott. What did we learn from Mueller? What did we learn? We learned that after 2 years of mudslinging and investigation, half of the country thinks that Donald Trump colluded with the Russians, and this was done preemptively in order to basically exculpate Hillary Clinton and Comey and all the rest who actually did this nefarious deeds. So if Donald Trump releases his tax returns, what the press will do is they will take a look at every single legal donation that they find to be ethical or unethical, rather, and they will frame it in such a way as to make it sound like the man is an absolute monster. And we've seen this. We've seen this happen since he was elected. I don't blame him one bit. This used to be a courtesy that was extended by a president to the American people fighting against a political party that had the best interests of America at heart. Those days have gone. And the reason that we're still a country is because this guy understands how those people fight, and he has given us a reprieve to see if we can get our house in order. When you talk about releasing your tax returns in the 1970s or 80s or 90s, this was well before the Internal Revenue Service got a directive from the President of the United States saying, disallow 501c3 conditions to conservative groups. This was before the government was weaponized against half of the American public. And since it has been weaponized against half of the American public, I say it's none of anybody's business how much money I make or what my tax returns say. If this is how the government wants to play ball, then I don't blame Donald Trump one bit. Now, if I were Donald Trump, I'd be a little more on point about why I wasn't doing it. I'd just say what I basically just said. No, I'm not going to do it. And the reason I'm not going to do it...
Well, that communication position is still open in the executive branch, by the way. They haven't filled that that empty position. Maybe
info at billwhittle.com, Mr. President.
So let me finish up with this. There is in Washington State, the sponsor of the bill there, a Senator Patty Kuderer, Kuderer, is being called a hypocrite by Republicans in Washington State. She represents the wealthiest district in the state, and she has in which the two richest men in the world live, Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos, among her constituents. She has refused to release her tax returns when asked by a reporter at the Seattle Times, and she said, well, the bill that she's proposed in the Washington State legislature only applies to people running for president and vice president.
Isn't that convenient? Now, I am extremely sensitive to the legitimate criticism of hypocrisy and double standards. I mean, that is a legitimate thing to criticize somebody about. So what is my position on this woman? My position on this woman is the same as my position on the president. She has no obligation to turn over her tax records. However, if there's evidence of financial misdeed that is a criminal activity, then I say take a look at it. But I can assure you that a long, long time before Donald Trump became president of the United States, any number of people with very, very deep pockets did their very best to see what they could catch him on, and they didn't catch him on anything. And I think Donald Trump has learned a lesson from the Mueller probe. I know I have. And that lesson is, if you're going to fight fair with an honorable opponent, then by all means, let's fight by rules that apply to everybody and that are good for the country. That would be good for the country. I think it'd be good for the country if the president released his tax returns as a courtesy in a fair society with a fair news media that could look at it and say, no, there's no violation of law here. But we both know that's not what will happen, Scott. We both know it. Everybody knows it. If they got a hold of his tax returns, my tax returns, anybody's tax returns, if they got a hold of your pastor's tax returns, if they got a hold of the most respectable person in America's tax returns, and they were able to have that document in their hands, I absolutely guarantee you that they would find a way to paint that person in such a way as to raise grave doubts among the third of the country that is suffering from this kind of insanity. I absolutely guarantee it. So I don't blame him one bit. Does it hurt him? Maybe it does, but it doesn't hurt him as much as having this kind of so-called, it's not even news anymore. We saw it for 2 years. Oh, Donald Trump, the accusations against Donald Trump in collusion with Donald Trump, traitor, blah, blah, blah. Nothing there. All of the evidence was supplied by people in bed with the Clinton campaign. Okay, well, have you heard any retractions about this? Have you heard anybody who said during the last 2 years that, with the exception of what's his name, was it Brennan?
John Brennan, yes.
Yeah, okay. He said, well, I may have been wrong. One guy said this off kind of I don't remember it being front page news, by the way. So look, this doesn't make me happy, and I hate to be in a position where I have to accept the fact that we're sending our medics over to prisoners who are wounded, and then we find out that the wounded prisoner is holding on to a live hand grenade and takes 3 of our medics out with him too. Well, okay, if that's how you want to play ball, then we're not going to send our medics out after enemy soldiers. If that's how you want to play ball, okay, you set the rules, and now we're going to play on it. But I'll tell you what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to use my decency and my sense of humanity and keep sending my medics out there to die in order to enforce a set of standards that particular enemy soldier, or at the very least that his organization does not respect. I'm not going to do it. I am not going to do it. And it doesn't make me happy. And I know that there are sometimes innocent enemy soldiers out there who could use medical care and had no intention of blowing themselves up. But if you look at what happened in the Pacific, you began to realize these are the rules. Now we're going to play by them. Got it.
Now, you realize, of course, that more than half the country, hearing the way you're talking about the Mueller report, for example, would have no idea what you were saying, or the way you were talking about the FBI conspiring with the Clinton campaign to throw the election in her favor. That is not accepted by more than half the country. It has not been charged in a court of law. It has not been proven by anybody. And yet you hold that forth as if you had certainty about it. Doesn't it, by the same token, couldn't you flip that around and say, well, it's not proven that Donald Trump's doing anything shady with his finances, but wouldn't it be better to have a peek under the hood and find out? You want to look into Hillary Clinton's emails. You want to see that followed up.
I don't have to. I don't have to look into Hillary Clinton's emails. James Comey, who is a psychopath of some kind, genuinely nuts. The director of the FBI got in front of the national news media and the world news media and read a 45-minute indictment, which basically showed that every single statement she made was a lie, every single one of them. This was what the investigation revealed. The director of the FBI, crooked as he is, went out there and said, we found this, we found this, we found this, we found this. I never altered any of my records. Did she alter any records? Yes. Trey Gowdy just put the screws into those traitors. And what we found was that, oh, yes, she did keep these records. Oh, yes, they were illegal. Oh, yes, she knew they were classified. Oh, no, she didn't turn them all in. Oh, yes, she did try to alter them. All of these things were admitted as a result of the investigation. And then James Comey says, but we shouldn't prosecute. She gets the stamp of approval from the news media that doesn't cover anything other than, oh, the FBI found nothing.
Essentially the same outcome as the Mueller report.
But
yes, we think that there was stuff going on in the Trump administration, but we don't have chargeable offenses.
But the difference is that what James Comey listed as Hillary Clinton's, as James Comey listed what Hillary Clinton's actual activities were, they are felonies. Whether he wanted to prosecute them or not, they are felonious. A large number of them are felonious. There's nothing in the Mueller report that is felonious, because if there was, we would be having an entirely different discussion now. So the two do not equate at all. They do not equate at all. And if James Comey hadn't investigated all this, and if James Comey hadn't said all of these things and the FBI, then I would be in the same position that you accuse me of being in, which is traveling with rumor and wishful thinking and not knowing what the hell actually happened. But I do know what happened. I know what happened after an intense review, because I saw the director of the FBI say what happened. And when he says that he handled them with whatever it was, culpable neglect, which is a precisely identical meaning to gross negligence, except gross negligence is what's in the statute. I'm not a child. I know they think I'm a child. I know they think we're all children, but some of us are not. Some of us have the ability to think on our own, and we know what's going on. And so I'm with the president on this one. You can have my tax return when you pry it out of my cold dead hands, because you are going to turn it into a weapon against half of the country, no matter what it says. And we have the evidence of this right in front of our eyes. And this is what happens. This is what happens when you decide to bring medics over and then blow them up with a hand grenade.
Well, perhaps the politics in this country someday will come to the point where military analogies are no longer applicable. But as it stands, Bill Whittle now comes to you 5 days a week and connects the news of the day with the principles of conservatism, and we're grateful for the people who make that possible. We do believe in the long run that these ideas will win. And the reason we believe that is because we have so many people standing with us who cleave to those same ideas, are able to express them rationally, are able to persuade their friends. And we thank the members at BillWhittle.com who are doing that right now. If you'd like to become one of them, go to BillWhittle.com and click that Become a Member link. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members for making this happen.